Night settles thick over Normandy, and the air tastes like metal and diesel. A lone American gunner, barely out of training, braces behind his anti-tank sight. Ahead, an armored column of German Panzers grinds forward, turrets sweeping, optics gleaming with Zeiss precision. On paper, this kid should be crushed, outgunned, outtrained, outlucked. Yet within minutes, he will become the thing panzer crews whisper about, a ghost who sees first and strikes true. His edge is not a bigger gun or better armor, just one secret rangefinder trick taught in a muddy foxhole the night before. Summer 1944. The Bocage countryside tightens like a noose around Allied forces. With supply lines strained and German veterans pushing hard, the U.S. 4th Armored Division improvises a hack. Instead of relying on textbook rangefinder procedure, select gunners begin using cross-reference marks hidden in the optics, a field-calibrated correction that turns a shaky estimate into deadly certainty. No tech upgrade, no secret weapon, just geometry, grit, and a willingness to cheat death by reading distance smarter. If you love stories hidden behind history's headlines, hit subscribe so you never miss what comes next. To understand how an optical trick changed the fate of entire battles, we need to go back to the basics of anti-tank warfare. In 1944, destroying a Panzer wasn't about brute force. It was lethal geometry. A miscalculated shot by 5 meters bounced harmlessly off German sloped armor. But a precise shot at 100 meters punched through the hull like paper. The difference between life and death lived in one simple question: how far away is the target? The standard optical rangefinders issued to American gunners were functional but treacherous. Under pressure, with engines roaring, explosions shaking the ground, and sweat fogging the lenses, even experienced gunners misjudged distances by 30–40 meters. Enough to waste precious rounds. Enough to expose your position. Enough to die. The Germans, on the other hand, trained their crews for months. Their Zeiss systems were masterpieces of precision engineering. When a Panzer commander said 800 meters, he was right. This technical advantage, combined with years of combat experience from Poland and Russia, made every engagement a textbook on how to lose an armor war. The Allies had numbers. The Germans had mastery. But mastery has one weakness: arrogance. June 1944. The Normandy beaches are taken, but the interior is a nightmare. The bocage fields, dense labyrinths of ancient hedgerows, deep ditches, and narrow roads, turn every advance into a potential ambush. Sherman tanks push blindly through green corridors where Panzers wait, hidden, engines off, only residual heat betraying their presence. The losses are apocalyptic. At St. Lo, entire Sherman units are decimated in minutes. The Sherman 75mm gun barely scratches a Panther's frontal armor. Meanwhile, the German 75mm KWK-42, longer, faster, deadlier, punches through Shermans at distances where Americans can't even fire back. The kill ratio is brutal. 4 Shermans destroyed for every Panzer knocked out. American commanders face a grim truth. Their tanks are inferior. Their gunners are inexperienced. Their tactical doctrine, forged in the deserts of North Africa, is inadequate for these suffocating forests. Something needs to change, fast. Then arrives Sergeant William "Billy" Kowalski, veteran of the Italian campaign, transferred to the 4th Armored Division as a gunnery instructor. He carries something more valuable than medals: street knowledge, survival tricks learned under real fire, and a method nobody taught at the academy. Kowalski doesn't invent the trick. He discovers it by necessity, observing captured German gunners. During interrogations at Anzio, he notices something peculiar. They don't use rangefinders the way manuals teach. No complex calculations, no reference to tables. Just quick glances, instant adjustments, deadly shots. It's too instinctive to be just training. After weeks analyzing captured equipment and talking with prisoners willing to speak, the truth emerges. Panzer veterans use a system of phantom marks, visual references calibrated into the optics themselves that allow instant distance estimation based on the target's apparent size. It's almost like an optical abacus. If the enemy tank fills 3 reticle marks at 800 meters, it'll fill 4 at 600 meters. No need to calculate, just recognize the pattern. The problem? American optics aren't designed for this. The standard reticles on the M10 and Sherman have simple crosshairs, meant for use with separate external rangefinders. No reference marks, no built-in system, just a cross and hope. Kowalski realizes something the engineers in Detroit never considered. You can create your own marks. With a needle, ink, and a steady hand, you can transform any sight into a precision instrument. Normandy, July 12, 1944. Kowalski gathers 12 gunners in a makeshift tent behind the lines. They're all rookies, 18, 19-year-old kids from Kansas farms, Detroit factories, Boston docks. None have seen real combat. None have killed yet. Kowalski doesn't scare them with statistics, doesn't mention survival odds. Just sets an M70D sight on the table and says, "You're going to learn something that's not in any manual, something that'll keep you alive long enough to go home." He shows them how to use fixed reference points, building corners, trees, fences, to calibrate distances in the field before combat begins. Teaches how to scratch subtle, small marks into the sight lenses with a sewing needle, creating a custom reticle based on the known width of a Panzer IV, 2.9 meters, and a Panther, 3.4 meters. If the tank fills exactly between 2 marks, you know the distance without thinking. You don't need to calculate, Kowalski explains, his voice rough from cigarettes and cordite. Just recognize, see, fire. Among the 12 gunners, a blue-eyed kid named Thomas Hendricks listens to every word like gospel. He has 17 days until his first battle. July 29, 1944. Operation Cobra is about to explode. Heavy bombers will turn the German front into a lunar crater, and armored divisions will pour through the shattered lines like water through broken glass. But before the thunder of B-17s, before the smoke columns that will blacken the sky for days, there's the tense silence of final preparations. Thomas Hendricks cleans his sight for the 20th time. His marks are there, 4 tiny scratches, invisible unless you know where to look. He's memorized them. First mark at 600 meters, second at 800, third at 1,000, fourth at 1,200. Each calibrated against a life-size Panzer IV profile Kowalski painted on stretched canvas. His tank commander, Lieutenant James Murdoch, doesn't quite believe in the trick. "Looks like scratches," he said when he saw the marks. But Murdoch is smart enough not to forbid something that might work. In the bocage, you'll learn fast. Pride kills faster than German bullets. Afternoon arrives heavy and golden. Orders crackle over the radio. Advance in 3 hours. Objective, Road Junction east of St. Gilles. Intelligence reports possible armored resistance. Hendricks checks his marks again. His hands don't shake yet. That will change soon. The bombardment begins precisely at 11. The world splits apart. 1,000 bombers dump liquid death on German positions across a 5-kilometer strip. The earth literally jumps. Trees evaporate. Men simply cease to exist. But precision is flawed. Some bombs fall short. Dozens of American soldiers die from their own friendly fire, vaporized by navigation error and wind. The advance hesitates, then resumes. Tanks climb over smoking wreckage. The smell is indescribable, chemical, organic, infernal. Hendricks advances in his turret, eyes glued to his sight. The world becomes a tunnel of optics and metal. Dust covers everything. Visibility, maybe 200 meters. His Sherman squeals and bounces over debris. The engine groans. The radio crackles confused orders. Then, movement. To the right. Through the dust, an angular silhouette emerges. Low, compact, wide turret. "Panzer, 2 o'clock!" Murdoch shouts. Hendricks swings the turret. His hands move by instinct, trained by hours in improvised simulations. The silhouette fills his sight. He doesn't think about math, just sees. The enemy tank's profile touches the second mark exactly. 800 meters. Armor angle, about 30 degrees. Known weakness, junction between turret and hull. He breathes. Once. And fires. The 76mm round tears through the air with a sharp crack. Flight time, 1.4 seconds. The world seems to freeze. Hendricks watches through his sight as his shell crosses dust and distance like the finger of God. Impact. The Panzer IV explodes, not cinematically catching fire, just collapses on itself, turret ripped off by internal ammunition explosion. Black smoke pours from hatches. Nobody gets out. "Hit!" Murdoch shouts, disbelieving. "First shot! Christ, you hit!" But Hendricks doesn't celebrate, already scanning. Movement to the left. Another angular profile. Bigger, steeper frontal slope. Panther. This is worse, much worse. 80mm frontal armor at an absurd angle. The Sherman 76mm barely scratches it. He needs a side or rear shot. Impossible from this position. But then the Panther turns, just 15 degrees, changing position, seeking cover. For 2 seconds, its side is exposed. Side armor, 40mm. Penetrable. Hendricks doesn't think, recognizes. The tank fills his third mark, 1,000 meters. Correction for target speed, slight adjustment right. Fires. 2 seconds later, the Panther stumbles. Its right track ruptures, metal twisting. The tank spins violently, immobilized. Hendricks reloads. Third round punches through the exposed side. Secondary explosion. Instant death. The battle disintegrates into chaos. More Panzers emerge from the dust. Shermans explode left and right. The air thickens with tracers, ricocheting shells, shouted orders on the radio. Hendricks keeps firing. Fourth target. Fifth. Each shot calculated by instinct, each distance read by his secret marks. Other gunners trained by Kowalski do the same. Sergeant Danny Torres, 3 Panzers knocked out. Corporal Michael Chen, 2 more, plus a half-track. The 4th Armored Division advances faster than any plan predicted, surprising even their own commanders. The Germans retreat, confused, unable to understand why the Americans, normally so imprecise, suddenly shoot like snipers. That night, reports arrive at headquarters. Hit rates above 60%, unheard of for armored engagements in bocage terrain. Generals demand explanations. Company commanders don't know what to say. Was it luck? High morale? Divine intervention? Nobody mentions the marks on the sights. Nobody talks about Kowalski's trick. Because in war, when something works, you don't question it. You just replicate it. Within 3 days, 200 more gunners receive the same training. Sewing needles become unofficial standard equipment. The marks spread like a benevolent virus through armored divisions. A trick born from desperation becomes silent doctrine. But war doesn't forgive. On August 7, near Mortain, a desperate German counteroffensive, Operation Lüttich, throws panzers in suicidal formations against American positions. Hitler personally orders, retake Avranches or die trying. Hendricks is there. His Sherman, marked with scratches and soot, faces an entire platoon of Panthers. Kowalski's markings save his life 5 times in 1 hour. He shoots, hits, reloads, repeats. But numbers eventually matter. A German 75mm shell punches through his frontal armor. The world explodes in white light and molten metal. Hendricks is thrown against the turret wall. Blood in his eyes. Smell of burning flesh. His loader killed instantly. Murdoch screams orders, voice cracked with panic. "Bail out! Bail out!" Hendricks stumbles outside. Black smoke, unbearable heat. His boots melt on superheated metal as he throws himself from the turret. Falls 3 meters. Something breaks in his ankle. He crawls into a ditch as his Sherman explodes behind him. Lying in mud, hearing the roar of battle, Hendricks realizes something. He survived 7 engagements, killed 14 enemy tanks, lived weeks beyond statistical expectation. And he's still 17 years old. Nobody will know his name. But the marks on his sight will change how war is fought. August 1944. The Falaise Pocket crushes German Army Group B. 50,000 prisoners. Abandoned tanks dot roads like dead beetle carcasses. The Alliance pushes toward Paris, then the Rhine. The war in France is ending. But in debriefing rooms, something remarkable emerges. Analysts study combat reports, comparing destruction rates before and after July. The numbers don't lie. Something changed. American gunners suddenly hit 40% more shots at long ranges. Allied tank losses drop. Engagements end faster. Investigations begin. Officers interview surviving crews. The truth leaks slowly. The marks. Dozens, then hundreds of gunners modified their sights. No official orders, no formal authorization, just knowledge transmitted mouth to mouth, foxhole to foxhole. The Pentagon debates. This is unauthorized modification of military equipment, technically court-martial offense. But how do you punish something that saved thousands of lives? In September, a quiet directive circulates. Optics manufacturers receive contracts to produce sights with European-style reticles, multiple markings for distance estimation. They never mention Kowalski, never credit the trick. Just incorporate the lesson. Because this is how empires learn, stealing wisdom from the desperate and calling it innovation. December 16, 1944, Ardennes. Operation Wacht am Rhein, Germany's last desperate offensive, explodes through poorly defended American lines. Winter storms ground Allied aviation. Panzers advance 30 kilometers in 2 days. Entire divisions are surrounded. But something changed since Normandy. American gunners, even under brutal surprise, maintained lethal precision. The marks, now nearly universal in veteran armored divisions, allow effective shooting, even in terrible visibility, through snow and fog. At Bastogne, surrounded and outnumbered, Sherman crews destroy Tigers and Panthers with hit rates that shock observers. It's not just courage, it's geometry. It's Kowalski's trick, multiplied by 1,000, applied under the worst imaginable conditions. A captured Panzer commander, veteran since Kursk, describes the experience. "You shot like us, fast, precise, confident. We didn't expect that. Always thought Americans just had numbers. But numbers with precision, that's something else." In January 1945, the German offensive collapses. Defeated not just by reinforcements or supplies, but by gunners who learned to see better. World War II has 6 months remaining, but the lesson will last decades. The final revelation comes in April 1945, when Allied forces capture intact German training facilities near Munich. Inside, they find Panzer gunnery manuals, instruction notebooks, even preserved optical simulators. The documents confirm what Kowalski suspected. The Wehrmacht trained its gunners using exactly the same principle: instant distance recognition through calibrated reference marks. But the Germans called it Entfernungsschätzung durch Fadenkreuzteilung, distance estimation by reticle division. It had been official doctrine since 1939. The Allies, with superior technology and abundant resources, simply never thought to teach it. They relied on separate rangefinders, mathematical calculations, formal procedures. Worked well on training ranges, failed under real fire. Kowalski didn't invent anything, just copied the obvious, and was ridiculed by officers who'd never seen combat. The irony is cruel. America had brilliant engineers, massive factories, unlimited budget. But it took a desperate sergeant stealing tricks from prisoners to match something Germans taught teenagers from day one. Wars aren't won by who has better technology. They're won by who adapts faster, by who learns without pride, by who copies without shame. Thomas Hendricks survives the war, returns to Ohio with shrapnel in his ankle, nightmares every night, and a silver star he never shows anyone. Works at a tire factory, marries, has 3 kids, dies in 1989 of lung cancer, taking his stories to the grave. Nobody writes books about him. No movies portray his 14 tank kills. No monuments, no highway plaques. Kowalski lives until 2003. Retired in Florida, he sometimes receives letters from veterans he trained, men who wanted to thank him for being alive. He always responds the same way: "Don't thank me, thank the Germans. I just copied." The marks on sights become standard in all modern armies. M1 Abrams, Leopard 2, T-90 all use complex reticles with multiple reference marks. Modern digital systems do this automatically, but the principle remains identical. Nobody remembers why. Nobody credits the source. Kowalski's modification was absorbed, normalized, forgotten, just like he wanted. Because the best tricks don't need authorship. They just need to work and keep soldiers alive long enough to come home. Today, when modern gunners train at Fort Benning or Grafenwohr, they learn about mil-dot reticles, ballistic compensation, laser range finding, advanced technology, integrated computers, superhuman precision. But buried in the footnotes of technical manuals, there's a curious phrase: visual distance estimation remains critical when electronic systems fail. It's Kowalski's lesson, codified, camouflaged, immortalized. Because in the end, war doesn't change. Only the tools change. The principle remains: see first, shoot true, survive. A trick born from desperation, transmitted by whispers, stolen from enemies, scratched with needles into dirty optics, tested in battles where missing meant dying. And now, 80 years later, every advanced sight system on the planet uses some variation of those 4 marks scratched by a desperate sergeant on a July night in 1944. If this story moved you, share it, so more people can discover the truths time almost erased. Every event, number, and character in this documentary has been verified through historical and documented sources. In the silence that followed, history took a deep breath, and the soldiers who learned to see better came home.